UFC 313 fight week. It's about to be here, and Alex Pereira is about to take on perhaps his toughest challenge yet, Magomed Ankalaev, this weekend. A legacy-defining fight for Alex Pereira, who we all know is going on a generational run right now. Generational. He's probably considered by most people a top 15 to top 10 fighter of all time. He is having one of the greatest runs in the UFC, approaching his now what would be his fourth title defense if he beats Magomed Ankalaev. He's a middleweight champion, or he was, and now he's the light heavyweight champion. He's coming off 4 straight light heavyweight wins, or is it 5? I don't know. He beat Jan, he beat Yuri, he beat Hill, then he beat Yuri again, and then he beat Khalil Roundtree. And that's just his light heavyweight run. That was all, not even mentioning his middleweight accolades or his kickboxing accolades. Alex Pereira is an elite fighter in the UFC. And he's taken on Magomed Ankalaev, the number 1 ranked contender. This was a long time coming, considering all the talks of Alex Pereira maybe ducking and Magomed Ankalaev being denied his shot by the UFC time and time again. But he's 20-1. I mean, clearly he was the next guy up. This is truly Alex Pereira's last. Magomed Ankalaev's the last test for Alex Pereira at light heavyweight. Outside of Magomed Ankalaev, there's nobody else you really could see. Because Alex Pereira's already done it. He's already cleared out the light heavyweight division besides Magomed. He's beat Khalil, Jamal, Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prohaska, maybe Carlos Ulberg. But let's be real. Carlos Ulberg is not on that level. So this is truly Alex Pereira's last real test at light heavyweight. And Magomed Ankalaev is perhaps the most well-rounded fighter in the division, which I guess proves why he's 20-1. He's beat Johnny Walker. He's beat Alexander Rakic in his last fight. Time and time again, he's been fighting, and the UFC, when you thought we're going to give him the title shot, gave him another fight to get over the hump. But now he's here, and rightfully so. I mean, he's the number 1 contender. They kind of, gave Alex Pereira at UFC 307 another fun fight in Khalil Roundtree, but was Khalil Roundtree really deserving of it? No. But it was still another fight that ended up building what this fight is now. For both these guys, their last fights really added to the storyline that we approach with this weekend with this title fight. Magomed coming off the win from Alexander Rakic, and Alex Pereira coming off several consecutive wins in a row where he defended the title in the light heavyweight division in extremely entertaining fashion. It's not like Alex Pereira is going to decisions. He's knocking everyone out in the first couple of rounds. Granted, Khalil Roundtree took him to 4 rounds, and a lot of heart by Khalil Roundtree, but Alex Pereira ultimately went to his just flow state, and he's just catching everyone with this left hook, the legendary left hook power that is unheard of. We've seen this crazy power come from Alex Pereira's hands. But can you feel it? I think I could feel it. I do not believe this is the end of Alex Pereira's legacy run. He's too good. We can't lose this guy as a champion. I'll be so depressed if Magomed Ankalaev takes away one of the most entertaining champions, another entertaining champion in the UFC, where it changes hands to a Dagestani who doesn't have a lot of finishing power, doesn't really finish. I mean, sure, he has some striking, he has the wrestling, but he doesn't really have exciting finishes. He doesn't have a lot of personality. That's what you're getting from Magomed Ankalaev as a freaking champion, bro. Alex Pereira is arguably the face of the UFC right now, which is why the UFC is, I guess, trying to keep him but you can only keep a champion as champion for so long when you start having to book him to the rightful number 1 contender. You can't keep giving these champions number 7 and number 8 ranked guys when you have a clear number 1 who's been winning just consecutive fights. And I believe this is no different. I believe Alex Pereira is going to go in there, and despite maybe Magomed controlling him a little bit, maybe deploying some wrestling if he gets frustrated on the feet, I truly believe that Alex Pereira is going to find another way to end up chinning this guy and putting him the F down, bro. Because we need, Alex Pereira, he's so elite on the feet, the power. He could counter-strike with Magomed and catch him easily. But, again, Magomed is definitely the hardest test for Alex Pereira I think he's ever faced in his career. the hardest test in this division that Alex Pereira has moved up to with his wrestling threat. Alex Pereira doesn't have the best takedown defense. And that's what I hate to see is when the elite champions, but they're elite strikers, and then they get completely overrun by a guy's smudge wrestling, and they get contained, and they're not able to use their best skills and attributes to utilize the fight to their advantage. But I think Alex Pereira just finds a way. He's going to kick him with the leg kicks. Alex Pereira is some of the hardest leg kicks. And he's going to kick and get Magomed wobbled. Magomed, Alex Pereira, he's going to do it. That's it. That's all I'm keeping it to Alex Pereira. And, a lot of people are saying that this narrative that Alex Pereira, his preparation for the fight isn't what it is, and he's traveling too much. He's going to Drake concerts. He's signing signatures for women. He's doing all this stuff. He's walking in New York City. And funny enough, actually, my friend met Alex Pereira in New York City when Alex Pereira was doing the live stream with Moses the Jeweler. But Alex Pereira, he's done this before. He stepped in on short notice versus Yuri Prochazka. You don't think he was traveling before that? He stepped in on short notice and still had a masterclass performance. I don't believe that his outside life has any implications or impact on the way he's preparing for this fight, because he's still training. We just don't see that real part. You only see kind of what he's doing outside of training, and that's all the fun stuff on social media of going to this place and going to the Drake concert in Australia. It happens to be Magomed's probably more locked in. He's training in Dagestan mountains and doing all this crazy Dagestani training, while Alex Pereira sure is showing his face at different UFC pay-per-view events. This ain't the end, bro. This is not the end of Alex Pereira. When you're not losing this champion, Alex Pereira is going to beat this man, cement his legacy even further than what it already is, and actually put himself up into one of the greatest fighters. Because this right here, this is that fight to prove that. He already is, but this fight will even more so. It will leave no more doubts of his greatness in the light heavyweight division. And from there, you could only talk about even bigger fights, possibly moving up to heavyweight, because there's no challenges or tests left in the light heavyweight division. What do you do with Alex Pereira after this if he wins? I'll really be depressed if Magomed wins, bro. And Alex Pereira, just sensational run right now. I'm feeling it. A knockout within this fight. We need it. Next up, Rafael Fiziev versus Justin Gaethje. The short notice replacement. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this... it's easy to wrap my head around it. It's just hard to accept that I'm not having a Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje fight this weekend before a Alex Pereira Magomed Ankalaev fight. Those two fights right there had this card pretty hype. But is what it is. I got to just come in with the headspace that this will still be an entertaining fight. It will still be competitive. Rafael Fiziev had a very close fight with Justin Gaethje the first time. And Justin Gaethje, right? He's coming off one of the most brutal knockout losses in UFC history. But before that, he put together a 2-win streak. Before that, he lost. But then before that, he also had a couple of a win streak. Justin Gaethje seems to always bounce back in a big way. Right, and he's called the highlight for a reason. He has some of insane KOs in the UFC in his highlight reel. He's one of the most violent. He's labeled as one of the most violent UFC fighters in the promotion. He's just extremely entertaining. He's gone toe to toe with the best, and he's lost to the best. He's lost to Charles. He lost to Khabib, but he's beat Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, including his first fight with Rafael Fiziev. He has some really exciting fights under his belt, and he always shows up and puts on a show no matter what. But as we know, he came off the crazy knockout loss to Max Holloway, where he lost his BMF title. But this is real BMF activity right here. Justin Gaethje staying on the card, saying, give me whoever, and I'll take them on. And Rafael Fiziev ended up being that guy, even though we had Arman Sarukian offer, but at a catch weight. Apparently, Dustin Poirier was saying that he wasn't saying no. This just felt from the get-go, once the reports were coming out of who it's going to be, that it was going to be Rafael Fiziev. And yeah, this hopefully is going to be a fun, striking back and forth, just like the first fight. But I do believe that Justin Gaethje, just with a full camp and already fighting Rafael Fiziev, I just see Justin Gaethje coming out of this one, hopefully by vicious knockout. I want Justin Gaethje to get back in the mix for a last run and maybe a title conversation following this fight, because we're nearing the end. We're nearing the end of the old guard in lightweight. In the next couple of years, we're going to lose, like already this year, we're going to lose Dustin Poirier. Justin Gaethje, who knows if he loses this fight, it might be his last fight. So yeah, this is the lightweight. Next up, Jalin Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Fight to put on the card. Ignacio Bahamondes coming off the win from UFC Noche. Jalin Turner coming off the loss to Renato Moicano, UFC 300. Two lightweights with length. And this is bound to be hopefully an entertaining fight as well. You know, a hooker versus Gaethje at home kind of type fight. And Jalin Turner, he's put on some great fights in the UFC. He gave Bobby Green a crazy beating. I saw this clip. This was the fight before Renato Moicano, and Jalin Turner fought Bobby Green, KO'd him, but then just the amount of damage that was added afterwards, the ref should have stopped it, and he just didn't. He let Jalin Turner put on probably like an extra 15 seconds of beating on King Green before stopping the fight. So who knows how much extra damage Bobby Green got because of that. And Jalin Turner, he also had a very entertaining fight versus Dan Hooker. But another thing with Jalin Turner is, and this was a example from his last fight, when he fought Renato Moicano, he knocked him down. He knocked Renato Moicano down, and then he proceeded to kind of stop the pressure. He thought that he won just off that one hit, and Renato Moicano was phased from Jalin Turner's little jab. But then he just didn't apply enough pressure in that moment. He thought he won, and he started to he took his foot off the gas, and Renato Moicano had time to recover. And Jalin Turner wasn't able to finish him. It went into the next round, and before you know it, Renato Moicano turned the fight around and came back and won. And yeah, that was just horrible on Jalin Turner's part. He could have been on a 2-fight win streak coming into this fight. But yeah, Jalin Turner, he's an entertaining lightweight. He's got some length, some striking, and we'll see how he goes up against this up-and-coming contender in a prospect in Ignacio Bahamondes, who also had a great fight in the prelims of UFC 306. And then I'm going to skip over this fight, bro. I don't give a shit about this fight. King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. Yeah, King Green, and this is again also kind of like the Jalin Turner fight. Jalin Turner and King Green, they're just two lightweights that are kind of just floating around the rankings, but they're on and off in their career. You give them some fun fights, and then you give them up-and-coming prospects that will just blow past them to higher ranking spots, and that's exactly what it is here. Mauricio Ruffy, King Green, it gives me a showcase performance type of vibe. That's what I mentioned in my early reaction video. This is a fight designed for Mauricio Ruffy to showcase his skills and style on King Green. Unless, I don't know, we don't know what King Green maybe would be able to throw back at him. Mauricio Ruffy had a pretty hard time putting away in his last fight, Lion Top. Mauricio Ruffy has only had 2 fights in the UFC so far, but King Green's been around the UFC for a very long time. He's gone in that octagon with some of the best. He's coming off the loss to Paddy Pimblett, where he got submitted in the first round. Before that, he beat Jim Miller at a UFC 300 prelim. But King Green, he's just up and down. He's like a Kevin Holland type of guy. He's just up and down with his fights, win, loss, this, that. They're just floating him around to kind of help. But this is a good opening main card fight. This is a great, and giving it to a up-and-comer like Mauricio Ruffy, one of the fighting nerds, to continue to boost his record. Let him have another showcase performance where hopefully it's more impressive. He gets a a very nice knockout, and then more people notice. Because right now the fighting nerds have all the hype. Gene Silva, Carlos Prates, these guys, Carl Barrio, these guys all have the hype right now. They're all undefeated in their UFC runs so far. They're kind of just dominating each division that they're in right now. It's crazy. It's going to be a Fighting Nerds takeover. But some people were saying that Mauricio Ruffy is maybe one of the best Fighting Nerds, but we didn't really see that from his last performance. We've seen better stuff from Prates and Silva before we saw anything from Mauricio Ruffy. So he's got what to kind of prove in this fight and have a much better performance and get a real statement win. If he gets brought to decision, people, aren't going to be so high on that Mauricio Ruffy train. And yeah, people are comparing him, giving him Conor McGregor comparisons. His fighting style is very similar to Conor McGregor. So yeah, that's another fun fight on this UFC 313 card. On the prelims, on Curtis Blaydes versus Rizvan Kuniev. Curtis Blaydes coming off the loss to Tom Aspinall. He's given a guy debuting, making his UFC debut from the Dana White Contender Series, which is people were saying is a little bit of some disrespect to Curtis Blaydes, a very prominent top 5 ranked heavyweight in the division who just came off a title fight, and you're giving him a guy who's making his UFC debut. But you never know. I mean, this guy could shock us and shin Curtis Blaydes, but I don't know. I don't really know much about Rizvan Kuniev, but Curtis Blaydes, you got to give him the nod here. Feels like when he's had more experience, has fought for the title, Curtis Blaydes in his element here to take on this guy. But cool prelim that they moved on to here that makes the card better. And then Joshua Van, an exciting flyweight prospect making his way up. He'll take on Ray Tasuruya. We'll see how this plays out. Joshua Van had a good performance in his last fight. Who did he fight in his last fight? It was at 310, I remember. But anyways, that is pretty much the card. Marion Santos is also an up-and-coming featherweight prospect. He's pretty good. So yeah, this is the card for UFC 313. And it is what it is when we lost Hooker, but overall still extremely excited for it. Gaethje versus Fiziev, Jalin Turner, King Green versus Ruffy. By the way, my prediction for this fight, I think Jalin Turner will come out on top. He needs a good comeback statement win. Jalin Turner. I like to see him. I would like to see him back in more fun fights, and I don't want to see him fall out of the rankings. He's pretty good. He just needs to apply the pressure. More pressure when he's in these moments that he gets his opponent knocked down. And yeah, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Sensational main event. This is it, bro. We're about to witness it. We're about to witness Alex Pereira knock him out. That's what we need. That's what I got